What's good, YouTube? Welcome back. Today it is Lazy Daze Tubby, and I'm back at it again on my solo channel, and I'm doing some more history reaction for you guys today. And it is some more Kings and Generals content, and that is their series Caesar, the Gallic and Civil Wars. I'm really looking forward to finding out what they've got in store for me today. We are on their episode Munda 45 BC. I really enjoy this storyline, really enjoy finding out more about Caesar and obviously how Kings and Generals are telling that story. It's absolutely great. If you haven't already, head over to their page, links in the description box down below. If you're enjoying my reactions, looking forward to future reactions, you know what you need to do. You need to like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell, but we are going to jump straight into this one.
Following the Battle of Thapsus, Caesar had, at least politically, won the civil war. Militarily, though, some ardent optimates still challenged him in Hispania.
Okay.
For Caesar's victory to finally be complete, he needed to defeat these last remnants of the opposition. There would be just one more campaign before the civil war was over, Caesar's Spanish War. Welcome to our video on the Battle of Munda.
Okay.
The political heart of the Optimate faction, Cato, was dead. Cicero, his natural heir as political head of the faction, had resigned himself to being a part of the new order, rather than fighting against it, hoping that he would be able to persuade Caesar to restore the Republic. Many other Optimate senators had similarly resigned themselves to working with Caesar, in part because many of them had been captured and then spared by him.
Also, sometimes in situations like this, I believe, where it's looking like war isn't the way that you're going to win, sometimes you might have to destroy the thing that he's building from the inside, or the thing that you're going against from the inside. So I do understand that if you think all military hope is lost, that you would go to him hoping that you'll be able to make a change, make a difference from inside the organization, than just being killed, having any influence at all, and letting Caesar do whatever he wants. Even though he might command you to do something, there might be backhand deals that you can sort of do to get out of those, make a fly out of bad situations. Get what I'm saying?
The extent to which Caesar had won politically can be seen in the powers bestowed on him in the immediate aftermath of Thapsus. He was made dictator for the third time for a wholly unprecedented 10 years, made prefect of morals, and the Forum of Caesar was completed and dedicated to him in recognition of his achievements. Caesar was, for all practical purposes, the master of Rome. However, some of the Optimates still resisted. Gnaeus and Sextus Pompey had fled from Africa and arrived in Baetica. With them went survivors of Thapsus, including two of Caesar's most active and determined opponents, Titus Labienus and Attius Varus. Baetica had been chosen deliberately, as Pompey Magnus had been governor of the province in the 50s BC, and people in the area still respected him, including legionaries who fought against Caesar during the Spanish campaign of 49 BC.
Okay, I'm with you.
His sons found plenty of support, and managed to amass 1 legion from survivors of Thapsus. Shortly after their arrival, 2 legions under Trebonius's command had sided with the brothers, and they had managed to levy 1 more from sympathetic Roman citizens in the area, many of whom had previously served under Pompey's command. Additionally, the brothers made alliances with
getting a bit of support in Spain
with some Lusitanian tribes, and had drawn a number of deserters and others to their banners. Caesar claimed that they had 70,000, but he was probably counting garrisons and other supporters in that number.
So what, 30,000 Roman?
These events had happened in the summer of 46 BC. Caesar was, at the time, occupied in Rome with assigning magistrates, retiring many of his longest-serving veterans, holding games and triumphs, and beginning the reordering of the calendar. As a result, he had assigned Quintus Pedius and Quintus Fabius Maximus, along with 4 legions already in the Hispanic provinces, to handle the situation. As the months went on,
only 4 legions? What?
However, Caesar heard of the growing success of the Optimates and realized that he would, once again, have to handle the matter personally. He gathered 4 more legions, his favorite 10th, the veteran 5th and 6th, and the relatively new 3rd, and marched to Baetica, arriving in the area by the end of the year. By that point, Sextus Pompey had already taken the main city in the area, Corduba, and was holding it with a strong garrison, while Gnaeus was in command of the army alongside Labienus. Together, they had laid siege to Ulia, one of the few cities in the area that had not pledged allegiance to them. Caesar got to work immediately. Lucius Vibius Paciacus, one of Caesar's officers, who was
I agree with Jack, some of these names are so hard to keep up with.
Known to the Ulians and knew the area well, was sent with 6 cohorts and cavalry to the city, while Caesar began to march on Corduba, hoping to draw Gnaeus from Ulia, which was his favourite tactic. Paciacus approached Ulia during the night, and a huge storm swept in. Seizing his opportunity, Paciacus calmly marched his men through Gnaeus's lines. The sentries, unable to clearly distinguish any of the legionary symbols of Caesar's men in the dark and through the torrential downpour, simply let them past, allowing Caesar's lieutenant to slip into the town and prepare his men to defend it. Meanwhile, as Caesar was approaching Corduba, he sent a detachment of cavalry and mounted legionnaires as a scouting party ahead of his main force. They soon ran into a cavalry unit sent out by Sextus. The 2 forces clashed, Caesar's legionaries quickly dismounting to fight on foot. Not prepared for fighting heavy infantry, the Pompeians took heavy casualties before breaking and fleeing back to Corduba with the news that Caesar was near. Urgently, Sextus sent messages to his brother requesting reinforcements. Gnaeus quickly agreed, abandoning the siege of Ulia and marching to Sextus's aid. Caesar approached Corduba from the south. It seems that Sextus had either blocked or destroyed the bridge from Corduba that crossed the Baetis, forcing Caesar to create a makeshift one by lowering baskets piled with stones and then laying planks across them.
Okay, interesting.
Afterwards, he made camp
Smart Caesar.
outside Corduba. Gnaeus soon arrived, encamping opposite, and Caesar immediately began erecting a line of palisades from his camp to the bridge, cutting Gnaeus off from the city. Similarly, Gnaeus began creating defences from his camp to the bridge, hoping to cut off Caesar's escape. Fierce skirmishes were fought on the bridge itself, each side trying to force the other to concede control of it. The narrowness of the bridge made the fighting particularly brutal, and many were either thrown into the river during the fighting, or were killed and their bodies left.
You imagine if he was on the sidelines of that battle, how petrified you would be.
Piled on the bridge. Caesar was hoping for a quick and decisive battle, and this was clearly not going to be that. Accordingly, one night he lit a large number of campfires to give the impression his camp was still garrisoned, and then slipped out of the fort. He carried out a risky river crossing during the night, slipping away from the brothers and making for the town of Ategua,
nice, Caesar.
Pompeian garrison in the area. The next morning, Gnaeus realized what had happened, and Labienus pursued with his cavalry, capturing a number of Caesar's supply wagons, but withdrawing before they could be caught and pinned. Caesar, reaching Ategua, began besieging the city, encamping nearby. The terrain around the city was extremely hilly. Many of these had watchtowers already built on them, and as he had done at Ruspina, Caesar quickly assigned pickets. When Gnaeus and Labienus approached, they did so under heavy fog, and using it, they were able to surround and slaughter a number of Caesar's pickets, with only some horsemen escaping to give Caesar news of their approach.
Oh no!
Nevertheless, when the fog lifted, it became clear that Caesar's men had already claimed most of the strategically important high ground in the area. With little choice, Gnaeus was forced to make camp on high ground between Ategua and Acubi. although he could still see Etegua, he was not close enough to attack Caesar. The Optimates soon noticed that one of the hills to the south of the town, known as the Camp of Postumius, was an ideal location. A river cutting between it and Caesar's camp would make it difficult for Caesar to reinforce. Furthermore, it was close enough to Caesar to apply pressure and overlooked his supply and communication lines. Caesar and Labienus used this same tactic a number of times in the Gallic Wars, most notably at Gergovia, and Labienus sent a detachment in the night to seize it. The Caesarians, however, were alert, and immediately raised the alarm upon the attack, resisting fiercely. Caesar sent the 5th, 6th and 10th legions to reinforce them. With their countless experiences of river crossings, the legions were able to quickly force the river and come to their allies, forcing the Pompeian detachment to retreat to their camp. The following day, a reinforcing detachment of cavalry and allied kings arrived to join Caesar, king of West Mauritania Bogud among them. Gnaeus and Labienus now decided to abandon their position, marching further west to the banks of the river Salsa. Though they would be even less able to pressure Caesar from here, winter was beginning to set in, and this new position would make it easier to be supplied from Cordoba. Caesar, on the other hand, would be forced to winter around Etegua. A stalemate emerged as Gnaeus and Labienus fortified their camp along the Salsum, while Caesar simultaneously harassed supplies being sent to them from Cordoba and carried out several unsuccessful attacks on Etegua. This situation greatly benefited the Pompeians. With the locals on their side, it was in their best interests to stall Caesar as long as possible and hope to drain his supplies throughout the winter. Caesar, usually known for his clemency, was notably unmerciful during this period, as several prisoners were executed and captured couriers from Cordoba had their hands cut off. Gnaeus and Labienus kept
that actually really shocks me. One of the things that I thought Caesar done really, really well was making himself look good. We all know he wasn't necessarily good, but he was always able to, instead of sacrificing life needlessly, if he was able to save that life, get it to be loyal to him, and also then make him look good, he saw the advantages of that more than the lives being lost. And yeah, it was a really interesting side, so I'm quite shocked he's doing stuff like this. But then at the same time, any general's going to do these things, anyone's going to make these decisions, especially when they feel like they're in a tight position. It's all okay to forgive people when you know that the situation is going to be okay, but when you're in a tight situation, you don't know what's going to happen. Your decision making starts becoming narrower. So I do sort of talk myself around into it. I do sort of see why it would happen now.
Caesar under pressure, attacking his pickets, surrounding and killing many, forcing Caesar to send more men to dissuade any other attacks. They also continuously attacked Caesar's cavalry that ventured out to scout and forage. Once again, Caesar had his back against the wall. In early 45 BC, the pro-Caesarian faction in Etegua sent envoys to Caesar, offering to surrender if he agreed to remove the Pompeian garrison and not garrison the city himself. Caesar refused, and the envoys returned to Etegua. The Pompeian garrison soon found out about this and rounded up the men responsible, murdering them. This would prove to be a disastrous decision for
Holy shite.
men responsible, murdering them. This would prove to be a disastrous decision for the Pompeians. Neither Gnaeus nor Labienus had ordered this massacre. They were outraged, as this could have cost them the support of the people. Looking to salvage what they could from the situation, they snuck a messenger into Etegua, telling the garrison to sally out that night and force a way through Caesar's lines to their camp. The plan went into effect that night.
I guess at this point, the position is really lost. Yeah. Yeah. I see why you would make that decision. Okay. Interesting.
Night, the garrison rushing out and trying to fight through Caesar's lines. Caesar's men, however, easily beat them back. Gnaeus and Labienus kept their men in battle formation across the river Salsum. In reality, it seems that neither particularly wanted to help the garrison, as following the massacre, Gnaeus and Labienus were not willing to risk their men's lives in order to save them. The Optimates retreated the following night, abandoning Ategua. Soon after, envoy...
See, now it is pointless. Now I look like an idiot for agreeing with the decision because, yeah, if you weren't gonna commit your men, when what was the point of telling them to leave? I think that's a bit silly.
From both the garrison and townsfolk came to Caesar offering their surrender. Caesar accepted, taking the city on the 19th of February.
What's he gonna do now then?
Following this action, both sides began focusing on gaining popular support for their cause. Caesar sent messengers to other towns in the area, like Ursau and Ucubi, telling them of the massacre of the Ateguans. Support for the Pompeians began to waver, some deserting to Caesar, and the Pompeians were forced to take more drastic actions, executing the political leaders of the pro-Caesarian factions in these cities. It was now Caesar's turn to apply pressure.
That's another mistake. What are you boys doing?
He first moved his camp near Gnaeus's on the river Salsum, beginning to fortify the area. Gnaeus attacked quickly, however, throwing the men working on Caesar's defences into disarray. 2 centurions of the 5th bravely pushed forward, both dying in brutal fighting, but their sacrifice inspired their cohorts to follow and stabilize the line.
Yes, boys.
Nevertheless, Caesar had gotten the worst of the fighting, and he relocated to Soracarea, establishing a fort there that cut Gnaeus and Labienus off from Aspavia, an important town for supplies. Gnaeus gave chase, keeping his men
That's interesting.
on the high ground, but some clever maneuvering and prediction from Caesar led Gnaeus's men to being caught out of position and taking heavy casualties. Both sides had now had some minor successes, but neither was close to a decisive victory. Gnaeus delaying the campaign had been effective at first, but the loss of Itegua and the skirmish at Soracarea had cost him a lot of support. Caesar, meanwhile, needed to bring the civil war to a conclusive end. The resistance of the sons of Pompey, Labienus and Varus, was undermining his position politically. Both needed a quick victory. The older generals, including Labienus, urged Gnaeus to avoid battle and continue his delaying campaign, but the latter's mind was
That makes sense as well.
made up. He broke camp at Soracarea, making for the town of Munda. Caesar followed. On the 17th of March, both drew up for battle. Gnaeus and Labienus had chosen a strong position. The town of Munda was on high ground, and they drew up their army in front of the town on the hill. At the base of the hill was a plain.
An interesting battlefield. How's Caesar going to deal with this?
Approximately 5 miles wide, with a stream cutting across the middle of it. Though Caesar says they had 13 legions, this is questioned by other sources, some putting the number lower than 40,000. It is possible that the sources are somewhat muddled, and that Gnaeus's full force was around 70,000, including auxiliaries and allies, of which around 30 to 40,000 were legionaries.
Okay.
Caesar was encamped opposite the Pompeians on the other side of the plain with his army. With him were 8 legions, 3 of whom had fought with him since the Gallic Wars, the 5th, 6th and 10th, and 8,000 horsemen, including some excellent light cavalry brought by Bogard. Caesar gives his own numbers as 40,000.
I think those cavalry might come in handy.
But in reality, his army numbered around 50 to 60,000 men. Caesar made the first move, marching his army out of camp and onto the plain. confident that the Pompeians would come down from the hill and fight on the plain, so their cavalry on the flanks would have room to move. The Pompeians held their position. Caesar advanced further to the banks of the stream. Again, the Pompeians did not move. Caesar crossed the stream, and still the Pompeians did not move. Gnaeus and Labienus knew the strength of their position and would force Caesar to fight on their terms.
Okay.
Having finally brought his enemy to the field, and not wanting to risk missing a chance for final victory, Caesar moved to the base of the hill, drawing up his force with the 10th in the position of honor on the right, the 6th in the center, and the 3rd and 5th on the left, the rookie legions interspersed between the veterans and behind, and with his cavalry on the flanks. With little room for any elaborate maneuvers, Caesar ordered his infantry to attack the Pompeians.
It's just gonna be a slogfest up the hill. It's disgusting. Imagine like having all that armor, that shield and the sword, fucking trekking it up a hill and then having to kill some motherfuckers and possibly die. That's just... The people back then were just different. They were just built different.
Head on. The fighting was brutal, Caesar's men having the benefit of experience, Gnaeus and Labienus's men having the terrain advantage and being driven by the strongest motivator, desperate survival. Neither side was making progress. The generals and staff officers of both armies had started the battle on horseback,
Okay.
Caesar riding through his lines, urging his men on. As the brutal fighting continued, Caesar grabbed a shield from one of his soldiers, saying to the other officers, "This will be the end of my life and your military service," and pushed his way through to the front lines, almost immediately taking a hail of javelins on his shield.
Holy fucking shit, Caesar! Get in the fucking thick of it! My fucking G!
His other officers and legates also quickly dismounted and joined him.
Yeah,
fighting
damn
alongside
straight.
him. Gnaeus, Labienus and Varus had also dismounted and were fighting amongst their own men in the carnage.
All of them just getting into the thick of it.
It
Oh,
was some
dirty
of the most
battle.
brutal fighting seen in the Civil War. Despite being reduced in numbers due to years of campaigning, the 10th Legion, one of Caesar's favourite and most experienced legions, finally managed to turn the tide of battle, pushing the Pompeian left up. Gnaeus was forced to move a legion from his right to reinforce that wing, and as soon as he did, Caesar's cavalry fell upon the now weakened right flank. The Pompeians started giving ground, being pushed back to the walls of Munda, where they finally broke into a general rout, some making it into the town of Munda, others scattering in all directions. 30,000 Pompeians lay dead on the battlefield, Caesar having lost 1,000. Among the Pompeian dead were Varus and Caesar's one-time friend, ally and right-hand man, Labienus. Their heads were brought to...
Their heads. I was just about to say, at least they died on the battlefield with honor. Their heads.
Friend, ally and right-hand man, Labienus. Their heads were brought to Caesar after the battle, and Caesar ordered their bodies be found, and then had them buried with honors where they had died.
Nice.
According to Appian, Caesar would later say that he had often fought for victory, but that on this occasion he fought for his life.
Statement and a half.
Despite this decisive victory, the campaign was still not over. Gnaeus had escaped the battle and fled to Carteia with what survivors he could gather. Many more were either preparing to defend the town of Munda or retreating to Cordoba. Caesar's men blockaded the men in Munda in a gruesome fashion. The bodies of the dead Pompeians were used to create a palisade, and spears with heads of the dead were put along with it. Meanwhile, messengers reached Sextus in Cordoba with news of his brother's defeat, and after gathering a bodyguard, he slipped out of the city at night.
Okay.
Leaving a detachment under Fabius Maximus to keep the survivors in Munda surrounded, Caesar soon arrived at Cordoba. It had since been reinforced by some who had escaped Munda, But with the help of the pro-Caesarian faction in the city, Caesar quickly stormed and took the city, 22,000 Pompeian soldiers and sympathizers dying in the fighting.
Holy shit!
In Carteia,
he's really wrapping it all up. He's like, I'm done with this civil war. I need my stamp of approval. Clean up time. Clean up time.
Pro-Caesarian faction there detained Gnaeus and sent envoys to Caesar, hoping to atone for previously having sided with the Pompeians. However, the pro-Pompeians rescued Gnaeus, killing the leaders of the Caesarian faction and fighting to take the gates of the city.
Shit.
Gnaeus was injured during the fighting, but was able to escape the town with 20 ships before Caesar could arrive. Didius, in command of the Caesarian fleet, heard of this and sent ships to give chase, stationing men along the coast to watch for Gnaeus making any landing. Having left in such a hurry, Gnaeus did not have time to stock up on water or food, and was forced to make land to try and resupply. Didius's men quickly found him and captured most of his ships, burning the rest. Gnaeus once again managed to escape with what few men he could. He and his companions were continually hounded as they fled, Gnaeus being wounded in the shoulder and leg during one of these skirmishes. Having been
shit, he's fighting for his life now, isn't he?
On the run for weeks, and now having to be carried on a litter, Gnaeus arrived at Lauro with probably less than 1,000 men. A Lusitanian betrayed him, telling his position to the Caesarians. A force under the command of Lucius Caecilius Lento soon arrived. Badly outnumbered, the Pompeians nonetheless made what defences they could on the high ground, and prepared to make a last stand. Despite Lento's large
at least these soldiers are these soldiers are dying to the last stand.
Numbers, he was initially repulsed, the Pompeians resisting desperately. Eventually, the weight of numbers proved too much, however, and the Pompeians were overrun, Lento's men cutting them down. Gnaeus, who had been carried by some of his men from the battlefield, was finally found. Despite his wounds, he bravely tried to fight back before being cut down. Like his father, he too was beheaded, his head being displayed at Hispalis before Caesar ordered him to be buried with honours. During this time, the men at Munda had continuously made sallies against Fabius Maximus and his men, but were consistently repulsed. Soon after Gnaeus' death, Fabius stormed the town, killing or capturing all 14,000 men there. All that remained of the Pompeians.
It's literally a slaughter. They're literally going, where are the Pompeians? We need to get rid of them.
The Pompeian faction was Pompey's son Sextus, who had escaped, but was now little more than a pirate. Meanwhile, Caesar had been travelling throughout the province, reminding the citizens what good he had done for the province while Caesar and Praetor there. While he was engaged in these actions, he was joined by one of his nephews, the grandson of his sister Julia. This young man was Gaius Octavius. It was around April of 45 BC. The great Roman civil war was over, and Caesar was on his way back to Rome.
Just going to reread that bit of paper to you guys. Okay.
Caesar was probably bored without gaming, but you shouldn't be, as the sponsor of this video, Rise of Kingdoms, is a great strategy game that is free to play.
Well, that is the end of that episode, and I'm pretty sure it's pretty much the end of the series unless there's a couple more episodes come out, but we do have a few more in this playlist, so we're definitely going to continue with some of these bits and pieces. I'm assuming it's like additional information, but I'm definitely looking forward to those. Let me know which one you want me to react to. If you haven't already, head over to Kings and Genrals page. They make amazing content. I really enjoyed this. I'm definitely looking forward to finding out other content creators information in regards to Caesar, and maybe some more information in regards to his actions and not so much the military actions, but political actions, things like that. If you guys enjoyed my reaction, looking forward to future reactions, you know exactly what to do. You need to like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and I will catch you in the next video.